I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our lives, all of the aspects of our lives, our individual relationships, our family relationships, our intimate interpersonal marital relations, our community relations, our business affairs, our international relations. Every single aspect of our lives can be traced to the character issues that plague us. Every ill that plague us has to do with the inadequate character formation of our people. And so I've spent a lifetime, a professional lifetime, studying and dealing with the problem and writing about it in my 4 books. In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller, and many regard it as the definitive book on the subject. And then my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age. The book that lays it all out there for you. All the disturbed characters of various types that you're likely to encounter in your life. How to understand what really makes them tick. How to understand their thought processes. Understand their behavior. How to deal with it. And most especially, what to look for in the way of the proper kind of help when you go looking for it. Because dealing with character disturbance is a really unique kind of enterprise. Not everybody's adequately equipped to deal with it properly. And then my book for the Christian faith community, The Judas Syndrome, and my book with Dr. Kathy Armistead for the relationship partner, their survival guide, a guide to surviving and thriving in this character-disturbed world of ours. How to pick up the pieces and move on, how to make sure you don't make the same mistakes again. My book with Dr. Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? Will explain to any toxic relationship survivor how they got to that place and how to avoid it in the future, and how we got to this place as a society where we have so much character disturbance. So I've written about it in my 4 books, and I also write about it in numerous articles on my blog at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. or drgeorgesimon.com. That's drgeorgesimon.com. Either URL will take you to the same site, and you can find hundreds of timely articles that will help you navigate your way through this character-disturbed world of ours. And we are live tonight. We are live the 19th of March, or excuse me, 18th. I'm getting ahead of myself. The 18th of March, 2018. We are live tonight, so I can take your phone calls at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. I'm happy to take your calls. If you want to ask a question, if you want to share a story that you think would benefit the audience, or maybe you just have a comment or two about the times that we live in and the character-related problems that plague us, please give us a call at 501-258-8326. Well, got a lot to cover tonight, if we can. Not the least of which is the article that I posted on my blog this past Friday. I want to talk about that just a little bit, so you can navigate your way to manipulative-people.com. You will find an article that I posted Friday in the afternoon, and then posted on my professional Facebook page at Dr. George K. Simon on Facebook. But I posted an article on disturbed characters can be crazy makers, talking about that gaslighting effect that so many authors these days refer to, that disturbed characters can inflict on folks. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But I also want to talk about something that is more important in my mind than anything else, and that is the root, the true root of the problems that we face in our country in every area you can think of. In every area of our social, political, and economic ills, it all comes down to the same problem. And I am so disturbed. I'm so unsettled. And I'm so saddened by the focus that we seem to give just about any other tangential aspect of the problem. And we refuse, it seems like we stubbornly refuse to address the core problem plaguing us. And as all the folks in any of the 12-step groups understand, until you nail, identify, and accept and acknowledge the core problem, you don't get anywhere. It's the first step. It's the very first step to recovery. And I'm going to give you an example. I was talking with a distressed school teacher. This is a school teacher who truly has her heart in the right place, really cares. And I'm the first to admit that many of our teachers are inadequately compensated for what they have to do. Because, as so many teachers find themselves, this woman found herself in the position to have to be parent, social worker, psychologist, coach, life coach, mentor, so many other things to the individuals in her classroom other than just a relayer of information, just an imparter of information. In order to teach, because of what she faced, in order to teach, she had to prepare in so many ways her inadequately prepared children to learn. Students that come to her from environments in which, there are all kinds of environments, not just impoverished environments, not just disadvantaged environments. Her character impaired students did not come only from disadvantaged environments. Yes, to be sure, there were individuals in her classroom who were unprepared to learn because they were coming out of homes where parents were completely absent, no father, a mother working double time and maybe strung out the rest of the time, and living in a cultural atmosphere, coming out of a neighborhood and surroundings where the values are completely topsy-turvy and where life is very dangerous, and learning all kinds of unfortunate lessons about how to cope with this crazy mixed-up world. So naturally she had these disadvantaged children there, but she also had children of privilege who had every single thing they needed to form decent character, but perhaps they were overly indulged and overly enabled not to develop themselves. So here she faces a classroom full of children, totally unprepared from a psychological level, from an emotional level, from an attitudinal level, from every level you can imagine, from every different perspective, unprepared to learn. Not only to learn their academic material, but to learn the lessons of life that would enable them to succeed in the world and make a meaningful contribution. And her complaint was, this is her complaint. And I empathize with her, and I understand the goodwill behind her complaint, but her complaint was that the administration, the overall administration of the school system, neither understood the nature of the problems that the teachers faced, nor did they empower the teachers with enough tools and discretion to address the problems effectively. My problem with that is, as well-meaning as this teacher is, it is never, ever going to work if that's how we're going to define the job of the teachers among us in schools. They can't be everything. It is remarkable when they are. There's no question about that. And any child who comes into that environment and gets such a teacher is blessed indeed. But no teacher in any school should have to face a student who is not characterologically prepared to learn. Character development is the job of parenting. And it needs to be reinforced by community standards and norms and culture. And as long as we keep trying to fix the problem by not looking at the source of the problem, in classic terms, we only enable it to fester. Our hearts may be in the right place. My hats are off to those teachers who try, to those civic organizations who try to make things better, to those churches who are actually true to the call of the tenets of their faith. My head is off to all of those folks. However, if we don't address the core of the problem, if we don't focus on it like a laser beam, and if we don't hold the folks responsible who are truly responsible for the problem, we're not going to get anywhere. And of course, I also heard this teacher make the same complaint that I've heard hundreds of times. I'm 70 years of age, folks. I'm 70 years old. And ever since I was a child in grade school, I have heard the same thing over and over and over again, ad nauseum. We just need more money. Well, we already spend more money per student than any other developed country on earth, and we have a pitiful result to show for it. Pitiful. Embarrassing. So it ought to be clear, we always have these folks say we should be looking at the data. We have folks who just get incensed at those climate change deniers who will not honor the data that says something is happening. And the data also points to the fact that the likely causes have to do with our lifestyle. And those folks who don't want to change our lifestyle and our means of consumption and whatnot are constantly skeptical of the data. And folks on the other side complain constantly. We need to pay attention to the data. Well, let's pay attention to this data. We already spend more money than any other developed country on earth. And it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment, the results that we have in so many places within our educational system. And why? Because teachers are asked to do the impossible. To raise children who should already come to the classroom properly raised. They should be able to teach. It would be, unfortunately, things are such a mess. Things are such a mess within the institutional structure that even kids who are properly prepared to learn, because they have had the character instilled in them to be attentive and cooperative in the classroom, aren't learning what they need to learn because many times they're provided with inadequate instruction from inadequately trained and unskilled teachers. That happens too. And that's a character matter too. How does that happen? How does a system get built by any set of administrators that allows such a thing? Accountability starts with character. It arises out of character. Honesty and integrity are dead. And that's because character doesn't mean anything to us anymore. What matters to us appears to be that we get an agenda of ours advanced one way or another. This is what plagues our political system. But I can tell you, folks, and this is one of the reasons why I don't get into politics per se, especially on this program. I am determined when I walk in that booth, because I know I face almost always the choice of the best of all the bad alternatives. I know that. So I have to make the least worst choice. And I always vote the better character. And it saddens me that most of the time, even the better character is so seriously flawed that it makes me sick to my stomach to even have to pull the lever. We are not going to solve any of our problems. I don't care whether you call them financial problems, political problems, other social justice problems. We're not going to solve any of it until we get to the root of why, culturally, we are spawning so much character disturbance. Why we are not building a society rich with people of integrity, honesty, goodwill. When you listen at the beginning of this program and at the end to the song that my wife and I wrote way back in 1999, well, actually in 1998 we wrote it and we published it in 1999. Meant for the turn of the new millennium. Hoping it would usher in a new age. The sentiment we wanted to put into that song was the interrelationship between freedom and character. Our founders knew this. They knew this. How do we know they knew this, and how do we know they meant this? Because they wrote very clearly about it. They knew that this dream of a free society that we were building, they knew that this Constitution we were framing, they knew that this whole idea of America would rest solely upon the character of its people. John Adams even wrote that only when you have folks with a solid internal moral compass can you structure a society and design a constitution to permit maximum freedom. Leave decent, God-fearing, morally well-grounded people alone. Just leave them alone. Don't impose unnecessary restrictions on them. Don't take away all their incentives to produce by taxing the heck out of them. Don't try to micromanage their lives. Don't try to impose values upon them. Leave decent people who already have a solid set of positive convictions about them and who live out those convictions in their daily lives. Give them maximum free rein, and two things will happen. They will prosper inevitably, and they will create opportunities for prosperity for others around them. The reason we have millions, hundreds of millions of laws on the books right now, trying to micromanage everybody's lives, is because we don't have sufficient numbers of individuals with the character to just be left alone. We can't trust anybody. And we're trying to solve the character problem legislatively. It's futile. People of nefarious character don't pay attention to the rules. I've said this many times before. It's laugh out loud funny. When I first started consulting to the prison systems many, many, many years ago, the first thing you see on the barbed wire fence at the gate are a number of signs that tell you what you can't do and what you can't bring in. No this, no that. No forbidden substances, no firearms, no other kinds of weapons. And do you mean to tell me that any person who's come to do something illegal or immoral, like pass some contraband into that system, you mean to tell me that anybody, upon seeing such a sign, would be deterred and say to themselves, darn it, can't bring the stuff in, might just as well turn around and go home? We're fools. We're absolute fools, thinking that any rule or law that we would pass could instill within somebody's heart the moral compass necessary to make this society work and work well. Now, I'm going to offend some people here because we've had a lot of bad things happen recently. But we got to talk straight about these character-related issues, because if we continue to refuse to address what the problem is, nothing is going to get better. Nothing. And we got a lot of problems, and they all stem from this problem. Two examples. Just facts. We've been a country with these liberal firearm laws for a long time. You know, it wasn't that long ago that gangs in Chicago and Detroit were shooting up their rivals with machine guns, they called them at the time. So we've had these weapons, and we've had access to them for a long time. As a matter of fact, we have more laws on the books now restricting access to those things than we've ever had. But you know what we didn't have? We didn't have young people in their anger or in their hurt going into places and taking out tens or more of their fellow students. And yet we have some people saying that the problem is access. The worst school-related mass killing occurred many, many years ago, and with a bombing, a homemade cooked up bomb. People of defective character will find a way. And we know, here's the worst part. This is the most insidious thing. It just boggles my mind, and it unnerves me so, is that we know what it takes. We know what it takes to build character. What it takes is a well-bonded, emotionally well-bonded family unit that's founded solidly in moral principle, and a supportive community that endorses the same values. We know that's what it takes. Somebody growing up has to feel connected, intimately connected, with those who are teaching them about life and how life is supposed to work and what your responsibilities are and how to meet those responsibilities and what can happen if you let your baser instincts get a hold of you and you stray off the path. And everybody else in the society or in your immediate environments has to endorse those same values. I can remember, folks, as a young person, knowing very, very clearly what the expectations were for my behavior and having absolute confidence that those values and standards that my parents promoted, to whom I was bonded, that those same values and standards were the values and standards that my teachers and the authority figures at school were going to endorse, that my neighbors were going to endorse, and in fact, any employer or anybody else in the community were going to endorse. I had absolutely no doubts in my mind what those values and standards were and what the rewards would be for adhering to them and what the negative consequences would be for straying. And if we return to that, we'll solve so many of our problems. Now, I'm not saying that everything was good way back when. And if we just go back to the old ways we did things, everything would be better. That's not what I'm saying. But we have allowed to erode some basic standards of decency and integrity. And we also have allowed to erode the importance of character. We don't stress it. We don't focus on it. And most importantly, we don't reward it enough when we see it, and we don't properly deal with it when it's not there. I don't know if you agree or if you don't. I've got another couple of points to make, but I'd sure like to hear from you if you have a comment or a question you want to ask. We are live tonight, the 19th of March, 2018. We are live tonight, so I can take your calls at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. I'm happy to take your call. Whether you want to ask a question, you want to make a comment, maybe you have a bone to pick with some of the things I've said, maybe you just have a situation you'd like to share that you think that the audience would be interested in, or that you think you'd like to have me comment on Doesn't matter. Give us a call here at ucy.tv at 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, I also want to encourage you, once again, to take advantage of the numerous articles on the blog at manipulative-people.com or drgeorgesimon.com. Either URL will take you to the same place. That's drgeorgesimon.com or manipulative-people.com. Either URL will take you to the right place. Hundreds of timely articles. Also, you're going to find on the website my schedule for workshops and seminars, and I will be posting within the next 3 or 4 weeks the first workshops in June. The first 2 venues have been picked. The first is the Philadelphia area, and the second is the Dallas area. So you'll be finding information not only on my blog, on the seminars and workshops page, but also at the sponsoring entity's website. And that sponsoring entity is PESI Seminars. So you can mosey on over to PESI.com and avail yourself of that. We have a caller. And so welcome to Character Matters.
Hello, Dr. Simon.
Hello, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir. You're talking about the way things have really degraded and the way integrity has gone, and the way people just don't do what they're supposed to. They don't seem to care. And my life has hit kind of a crisis point in the past 3 weeks. I was hospitalized for about a week with a breakdown related to long-term depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So for 7 days, first 2 days were very frightening, very a lot of shaking, a lot of crying, a lot of not sleeping. By day 3, I got used to things, took a light dose of Ativan and melatonin, got some good sleep, got off the midnight shift, began to think clearer. By day 4, I realized I was surrounded by friends, not 30 strangers that were so scary. The support staff was incredible, the nurses, the doctors, the counselors. I saw miracles while I was there of kindness. I needed a Bible. I prayed for one. A young man gave me one. And on my last day, everybody signed up for me. And I was leaving very excited about my life, even though something was really bothering me. During this whole week, I never saw my husband.
Mm.
And I sat in a paper uniform in a unisex unit without my clothes that he knew I needed, without any visitation, no response as to wanting any family counseling or marriage counseling. So on day of discharge, he seemed surprised I'm discharged because he was confident I would be there for 45 days because, as he puts it, I'm crazy. And so he shows up after I told him I'm eating vegetarian and I'm eating very clean. He shows up with a back seat full of donuts, and he looks like a mess. He's not interested in speaking to my nurse on discharge, not interested in any of my discharge instructions. Proceeds to go home with me where there's a little bit of talking. I call his family to try to touch base with them and thank them for being there for him while I was in the hospital and let them know that I'm okay. It's just some depression, anxiety. We're going to work through this, and thanks for being my family. He is intimate with me, as he has not been in at least 4 years, but will not talk about anything. Will not speak about going to counseling together. Tuesday, there seems to be an attitude of, you're crazy and I'm not talking to you. So I did what my counselor taught me. I got my clothes on and said, I'm going for a walk, because part of my day is taking exquisitely good care of myself from now on. I will never allow myself to descend that far. Mm-hmm. I have to take care of me. So I'm going to do a round And if I come back and you'd like to join me, please come with me. And if not, you can do as you wish. So I first round back, he has his head in his arms on his pickup truck and looks up at me with a look of absolute disgust. So I just turned around and kept walking and figured if your attitude improves, come on with. As I come back from the second round, his pickup truck takes off down the street very rapidly, and I don't hear from him again. So I'm calling people, trying to find out if he's okay. I call my mother-in-law. I call my sister-in-laws. I call people he works with. Nobody's seen him. And then his family's not answering. Well, then I find out he's cleaned out our entire bank account. Then I find out he put an attorney's retainer on my credit card and maxed it out. And then I find out on Friday, this was Monday I get discharged, Tuesday he left. Friday I find out that he has his own apartment now and his own new life. And he's decided after 25 years that he needs to be a better man, and he can't do it with someone like me holding him back. And that he didn't understand our marriage vows because he was too young and got into something that he was unaware of, and that marriages don't last forever. And I questioned his commitment to me and recommitment to me and his commitment to loving God and everything I believed our relationship was predicated on. And he has these pat, selfish, absolutely disgusting answers for any question I ask him. So it's been 3 weeks of isolation and thinking about my entire life and wondering, how do you do that to someone?
And I understand the pain that you must be in. My question to you would be, in asking that question, how does somebody do such things? Do you derive any comfort at all from asking that question?
No, just the sense that I'd better get my stuff together and learn to live differently and not ever be so vulnerable again.
Yes, and that really is the secret, and that's why I asked that question. That's why I've spent my professional career and why I've dedicated so much time and space in my books, all of them, In Sheep's Clothing, The Judas Syndrome, Character Disturbance, How Did We End Up Here, all of them, and even a forthcoming book. All I've stressed is the importance of personal empowerment and personal integrity. You have power over one thing and one thing only, and that is you have the power over the choices that you make and the steps you take in this life. You can't control anyone else. You can't control people, places, or things. You can't control the events that occur to you. A lot of life basically is a crapshoot, but you certainly can control. You certainly have it within your power to decide how you will respond to whatever the circumstance is in your life. And personal self-care, personal integrity, facing honestly and with conviction and with faith and with principle, the trials that you're given in this life is what it's all about. It's all about your own personal empowerment and your own personal integrity. And when a relationship works, it's with two people who have that kind of integrity come together and have no needs either to depend upon one another or to exploit one another. Come together and support one another, then it's good. Then it can be very, very good. But in the absence of that, it's always heartache. So you're learning, unfortunately, a lesson here. And if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on hold for just a second, okay? Hang on for 1 second. Okay, that's all right. I think the other call dropped just yet. I was going to hold another call, but do you understand what I'm saying to you? What I'm saying to you basically is that even these difficult aspects of your life, these difficult, painful things that you're reporting to me right now, can and will be a blessing in disguise, depending on your response and your choices.
Okay.
I know it may not seem like that now, and I know that your mind is likely to turn to those things you can't control, especially him, who you probably have put a great deal of emotional investment in, the relationship.
Way too much.
Yeah.
Way too much.
Yeah.
I thought it was my job.
Yeah, exactly. And your only real job, from a character standpoint, is to be that person of integrity yourself. That's your only real job. And in so doing, I promise you something remarkable will happen. You'll have much better radar when it comes to appropriately assessing someone with similar character for any future relationship you might have.
My counselor called it the BS meter. He
Yes.
said your BS meter will be exquisite after this. I said, oh, please bring it on.
Yeah. So I'm here to tell you, it will get better. You focus on you, and you focus on shoring up your own set of appropriate principles and your own integrity, and I promise you, all will get better. It all comes down to character, and yours comes first. Does that make sense?
It does, sir. It does. When is that new book coming out? I need it.
Well, you raise a great point. I'm my worst enemy here. I have been polishing the 10 Commandments of Character for the last year and a half. And I'm going to be taking a retreat of sorts over the next few weeks after the Easter holidays. I'm going to be taking a retreat of sorts so that I can finish it and finally get it out there. It's my own fault, but it is potentially my last work, so I wanted it to be just right. It's really important to me because I want to reach two sets of folks with the message. I want to reach those folks who are trying to rear children and help them understand the basic life lessons that have to be learned and mastered effectively, and how to do that in order to turn out with good character. But I'm also trying to reach persons not only like yourself, but people who are like your husband, struggling with severe character deficiencies, and telling those folks what lessons can still be learned, even in middle life or even in late life, and how they can be learned to shore up the kind of character that will take us through life's trials and tribulations and help us come out the better for them all on the other side. So soon, but not there yet.
Well, I look forward to it, and I think it's beautiful the way your work has flowed and the direction it's gone. And your last work, I think, is incredible because there's so much good that could be fostered if people just looked a little deeper and cared a bit more and took more responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's incredible what we all lose.
Yes. Well, thank you for your call, and I will pray that your life is about to take on whole new dimensions that may even surprise you. And just remember where you have the power. You have the power. You have the power always when it comes to your heart, whether it's open or closed, and whether or not you respond in the kind of ethical and principled way that serves the greater good and serves your own welfare as well. You always have that choice. If you're pouring energy and your attention into other people, places, and things, even spending any mental time trying to figure out why they do the crazy things they do, what makes them tick, any of that energy going in that direction is only going to succeed inevitably in depressing you in the end.
You're right. Yes. I'm living proof of it. And to go in a 45-day hold and get out after 7 days with hope and feel so grateful for everything around me, everything within me, everything I've been given, and to have this done. And I didn't crack. I didn't crumble. And I found out how many really good people I do know that genuinely care. And I'm so grateful for them because I think that's what's important. Now, people are incredible gifts. They're beautiful.
Well, I appreciate the call, and I will pray for you, and keep those things in mind. Okay?
I will, Dr. Simon. Take care.
Thank you. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Well, great call. And to the point. To the point. You know, I wrote very early on about what I call the behavioral formula for depression. The great Martin E.P. Seligman came up with what we now popularly refer to as the learned helplessness paradigm. And that learned helplessness paradigm comes out of clinical research with laboratory rats who were put in a situation on purpose where nothing they did appeared to affect the outcome. And in such a situation, any organism on this earth, when faced with a situation where no matter what they do, they can't affect a change in the environment or they can't affect the outcome of things, any organism will first become frustrated and then, secondly, feel helpless because nothing they do seems to work or change anything, and then that third, that helplessness will turn to hopelessness, and they will finally just give up and become depressed. And so the behavioral formula for depression, how we get there, is always when we have our attention focused on or we have our energy invested in something that we haven't the power to control. It could be that relationship partner that we're trying so desperately to understand. What makes him or her think this way, act this way? Why don't they see? How can they do this? We try so hard to understand them. And we try to do so many things to affect a change in their behavior, and nothing seems to work. And that's the formula for depression. Now, the formula for joy is just the reverse. The formula for joy is when we throw in the towel for those things that we can't control. That's the first step in any of the 12-step groups, by the way, too, is admitting defeat when it comes to what you can't control. And turning your attention and your energy instead to what you have 100% total power and control over, which is your choice in the moment, what you do, what steps you take, what way of thinking, what approach. We have the power to change our thoughts, and we have the power to act. We have power over us. Not only how we behave, but how we think. And that's where the formula for joy resides. Putting all of our attention and investing all of our energy in what we might do to improve our lives and build our own integrity of character. That's the secret to an empowered, joyful, vitalized life. And when it comes to relationships, it never works. It never, ever, ever works in an intimate relationship unless two people of really decent character come together to freely, mutually support one another in this difficult task of living a principled life. That's the only way it works. Unfortunately, these days, too many of us enter relationships where one party in the relationship is significantly character impaired. And it never works. In fact, unfortunately, the character disturbance and the character impaired party is usually enabled by all the active efforts that the responsible party engages in to try and make things better. In other words, the responsible party tries to do all the work, thereby inadvertently letting the character impaired person off the hook. That never works. It never works, and it never will work. And the statistics reveal the extent of the problem. Why do so many relationships fail? Why do so many marriages end in divorce? Why do so many toxic relationships exist? Well, because unfortunately there are too many character impaired folks among us, which is why I keep writing about it and why I hope this last work of mine, or what may be likely my last work, does all that I really need it to do in the way of laying out there for folks what needs to happen within the formation, within the emotional, characterological, psychological, and spiritual formation of an individual to emerge in young adulthood, not just as a responsible, not just as a civically or otherwise responsible person, but as a person of real integrity, of character, with a solid sense of internalized principles. A person who, if left alone, not micromanaged, not punished for their efforts, will not only prosper inevitably, but also create opportunities for others. That's what makes this great country work, or was intended to make this great country work. And so as you listen to the closing bumper once again in our program, I ask you to keep that in mind, the sentiment of the song about the interrelationship of freedom and character, and how each one of us bears an individual responsibility to honor and to live out the ideals upon which our great nation is founded, and to turn our attention to the real problem. It always comes down to character. There wouldn't be this misery. The caller's not alone. And I do, again, thank you for the call. So as you listen, keep that in mind. And also remember my books and blog articles at drgeorgesimon.com, manipulative-people.com. Remember this program on UCY.tv. Tune in again next week for another edition of Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon. Thanks for tuning in.